Hi everyone, welcome to this channel. I am William. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about something that keeps risk managers, compliance officers, and internal auditors up at night: third-party risk management. Before I begin, please feel free to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification button so that you will receive our latest podcast videos seamlessly. Let me start with a sobering statistic. According to recent research, 77% of security breaches now originate with vendors or third parties. In fact, data breaches involving third parties jumped from 15% to 30% in just 1 year. These aren't just numbers. These represent real operational disruptions, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. So why does this matter to us as auditors? Because third-party risk has been one of the highest-rated risks in the IIA's annual Risk in Focus document for several years. And with the IIA's third-party risk topical requirement becoming effective September 15, 2026, the expectations for internal audit to provide assurance over third-party risk are only increasing. In the next couple of minutes, we'll cover what third-party risk management actually is, why auditing it matters now more than ever, a practical audit framework you can apply, key areas to focus on, and common pitfalls to avoid. Let's dive in. Before we talk about auditing, we need to be clear about what we're auditing. Third-party risk management, or TPRM, is the structured discipline of identifying, assessing, controlling, and monitoring risks introduced by external parties we rely on to run critical business operations. Third parties include vendors, suppliers, contractors, cloud service providers, and even downstream partners. The risks they introduce span multiple categories: operational risk if a critical vendor fails to perform, financial risk from cost overruns or fraud, regulatory and legal risk from compliance breaches, cybersecurity risk from data breaches, and reputational risk by association. A strong TPRM program follows a clear life cycle: inventory, classification, assessment, scoring, remediation, and continuous monitoring. This life cycle applies across 6 key phases of the contracting life cycle: sourcing, due diligence, contracting, monitoring, issue resolution, and off-boarding. As auditors, our job is to assess whether the organization has effective governance, risk management, and control processes applied at each of these phases. So what exactly should we be looking at when we audit TPRM? The IIA's third-party topical requirement organizes the audit around 3 key areas. First, governance. This includes outsourcing decision-making, policies and procedures, third-party management roles and responsibilities, stakeholder engagement, and performance assessment and reporting. We need to ask, is there clear ownership? Are policies documented and followed? Is there appropriate oversight from the board and senior management? Second, risk management. This covers processes to identify, analyze, mitigate, and monitor third-party risks through the life cycle, accountability for achieving contractual terms, reporting and escalation of issues, and management responses to issues including remediation and termination. We need to assess whether risk assessments are actually being performed, whether risks are being properly prioritized, and whether issues are being escalated and addressed. Third, control processes. This includes business cases, due diligence, contracting and approval, contract review by legal and compliance, record keeping, contract ownership, onboarding, performance monitoring, escalation protocols, renewal monitoring, offboarding, and exit strategy. This is where we look for evidence that controls are actually operating effectively. Internal audit must assess all 3 areas, and any departures must be documented. Now let's talk about how to actually execute this audit. I recommend a 5-phase approach. Phase 1, planning. Set up your program for TPRM. Form a cross-functional team with representatives from IT security, risk management, legal, internal audit, and procurement. Understand your organization's third-party dependencies and establish a complete vendor inventory. Segment suppliers by risk. Phase 2. Scoping. Determine which third parties and which risks to include in your audit coverage. Prioritize based on criticality. Vendors providing essential services or handling sensitive data should receive the most scrutiny. Use frameworks like NIST or ISO 27001 to structure your assessments. Phase 3. Evidence collection. Gather documentation including contracts, due diligence reports, risk assessments, performance monitoring data, SOC reports, and issue logs. Use standardized questionnaires like the SIG questionnaire from shared assessments. Map specific vendor controls to those prescribed by ISO 27001 or NIST. Phase 4. Analysis and testing. Evaluate whether controls are designed appropriately and operating effectively. Test sampling of vendor onboarding and offboarding processes. Review incident response and escalation protocols. Assess whether continuous monitoring is actually happening, not just annual checklists. Phase 5. Reporting and remediation. Document findings and recommendations. Track remediation activities. Ensure audit trails are maintained for regulatory examination. Let's look at some common mistakes and how to avoid them. Pitfall 1. Treating TPRM as a point-in-time exercise. Many organizations perform due diligence at onboarding and then forget about it. But TPRM in 2025 and beyond is no longer about checklists. It's a dynamic, intelligence-driven, and continuous process. Auditors should expect to see ongoing monitoring, not just annual assessments. Pitfall 2. One-size-fits-all due diligence. Applying the same due diligence process to every vendor isn't just inefficient, it's indefensible. A risk-based approach focuses scrutiny where it belongs. Pitfall 3. Siloed ownership. The three most common barriers to building and scaling TPRM are siloed ownership of third-party risk, inefficient and redundant processes, and lack of visibility. Effective TPRM requires collaboration across the three lines of defense. Pitfall 4. Poor audit readiness. Teams are still rebuilding audit trails from emails and spreadsheets weeks before audits. Evidence should be centralized and readily accessible. Best practices to follow. Centralize your vendor inventory. Implement risk-based vendor tiering. Use technology for real-time risk visibility. Stress test supply chain resilience. And most importantly, maintain a clear audit trail that demonstrates continuous oversight. Let me leave you with some key takeaways. First, third-party risk is no longer just a procurement issue. It's a strategic business risk that demands board-level attention. Second, the IIA's third-party topical requirement sets a clear baseline for how internal auditors must assess risks linked to vendors, supplier, and contractors. Third, effective TPRM auditing requires a lifecycle approach, from inventory and classification through ongoing monitoring and offboarding. Focus your audit on governance, risk management, and control processes across that lifecycle. Fourth, continuous monitoring is non-negotiable. The question isn't if change is needed in your TPRM program, it's whether your program is ready to lead it. Finally, as auditors, our role is evolving. We're not just providing assurance, we're providing advisory insight across complex vendor ecosystems. That's the end of my sharing today. I hope this session has given you a practical tool for auditing third-party risk management. If you found this podcast video is useful, please feel free to share it out with your friends and colleagues. Thank you and have a great day ahead.